Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Guillaume Sainov, and I'm the Marketing Director here at 3CLogic, and it is a pleasure to have everyone join us here today. We are here to discuss the 3 steps to successfully navigating TCPA compliance in 2015, and this event is sponsored by yours truly, 3CLogic. So without wasting any time, diving into today's agenda, we will be discussing about TCPA regulations, but we thought it'd be helpful to take a look back at exactly what was the world like before autodialers, and then assess exactly what has been the impact since autodialers began to be used in the call center industry and why that led to the need for TCPA. At which point we will certainly dive into exactly what is TCPA, define it for you, and then finish with 3 ways to navigate the latest TCPA regulations to help you in the future. Hosting our event today, our guest speaker and industry expert will be Robert Killery. Robert is the Chief Innovation Officer here at 3CLogic, and he brings a wealth of information with him. He has 25 years of experience in developing and implementing contact center solutions, and before joining 3CLogic, previously served as the CTO for TouchStar Software, as well as was the VP of Enterprise Architecture at JPMorgan Chase, where he managed their 3,100-seat call center. So it certainly is a privilege and a pleasure to have Robert take time out of his day to join us to discuss TCPA. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is pass the presentation on to Robert. Robert, the floor is yours, and once again, pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Guillaume. Life before the predictive dialer or automatic telephony dialing system was much different for the contact center space. 80% of the agent's time was wasted just talking to answering machines, no answers, fax machines, etc. Led to a very low ROI on the investment in the agents and a very high percentage of calls that were just not properly handled. There had to be a better way to do this. Technology came up with an answer, which was the automatic telephony dialing system, or as most people in the industry know it as, is a dialer. What an ATDS is, it's a piece of equipment or system that has the capacity to store or produce telephone numbers to be called in a random or sequential number generator, and that can actually make the calls to those numbers. Benefits of it, they were huge for the contact center space. Sales, marketing, collections efforts, everything that needed to be based on the agent in the call center talking to the consumer skyrocketed. It allowed for intelligently managing the leads or the people that you're calling, allowing for automation and intelligence versus the old school deck of cards or Rolodex. Agent productivity went through the roof, and because of that, both the profitability for the agent and the quality of work brought attrition way, way down. The results, they truly spoke for themselves. Traditional dialing, 70% of your time not talking to consumers, meaning you don't have an opportunity to do your job well or to make money if you're commission-based. Afterwards, better than flipped. 80% of your time is actually talking to people, 20% is idle. Huge difference for the industry. So, problem. That's great for call centers. Nobody there had an issue with it. The problem were the consumers. They were suddenly being spoken to a lot more than they were before, and a lot of the vocal ones said, we don't like this, and started clamoring to the government. Getting 2 to 3 calls per day average, 98% of people just don't like them, and the number of complaints, 18,000 is a conservative number that has gone up and up every year that we've had government involvement in this industry. Primary form of government involvement is the TCPA, Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And what it is, it's actually a set of laws enacted by the government, by the Federal Trade Commission and the Federal Communications Commission, that are regulating exactly what we're allowed to do in the contact center space when calling consumers. Everybody knows that October 2013 was a very bad month for contact centers because that's where they changed the rules for TCPA, and particularly when calling wireless phone numbers. It was a very black day in the industry, and a lot of call centers actually pushed up until that day and then shut their doors or changed their business model. What the TCPA said at that point was basically you can't use a dialer or an ATDS to call wireless numbers unless you had express prior consent. You can't even manually dial the numbers inside your dialer because it still has the capacity to make calls, meaning that the lawyers could come after you for it. Cell phones, when you think about their definition and what they actually do, could really be considered an ATDS. You think about the fact that it has the capacity to store numbers, your contacts, or even generate them through a mobile phone app, and then make those calls. Case law is kind of split on it. Usually the judges say, no, that's unrealistic, but there have been cases where people have used mobile apps to make calls and been sued for TCPA violations. Penalties are steep. Penalties are $500 per phone call if it was unwilling or ignorance when you made the call, or $1,500 per phone call if you intentionally, willfully, and knowingly made the calls and realized it could be a TCPA violation. Give you an idea, normal predictive dialing rates, 25 agent call center in 1 8-hour day could incur over $10 million in penalties. Okay, you may be saying, who does this affect? Does this affect my business? This affects every business in the United States or doing business in the United States that contacts consumers for the purpose of a sale or generating revenue. Doesn't matter what it's for, it applies to everybody. What this means is that if you are a copier service company, and I use this because there's a major copier company that actually has it in their contract, you have to have language that gives you express prior consent, or you can't use an ATDS to even make the calls to set up your appointments for service for your copier. That is an attempt for you to generate revenue in the form of the service call or the maintenance agreement for the copier. And if you do it using an ATDS, you are now liable under TCPA. So any business, it doesn't matter if you're a call center or not, you could be a mom and pop carpet cleaning store. And if you use an ATDS and you call the customer without permission, you are potentially liable. This is not a completely bleak story. There is actually several ways that you can successfully navigate TCPA in 2015. Number one, most important thing in the world, not just for compliance, but for business, obtain express prior consent. If you do your marketing through your own websites and SEO, or whether you hire a lead generator that generates your leads for you, work with them, work with your attorney, and get the express prior consent language onto the websites where the consumers are actually giving you permission. The permission, very simple wording. It can be 1 or 2 sentences where they check the little box and they say accept when they submit the phone number to you. That's very, very important that it actually says that you can call them using an ATDS or automated system. Automated system for making a call will usually cover you under the language. As I always say, I'm not an attorney. I don't even play one on TV. This is business guidance for you to talk to your legal counsel. Key thing about getting express prior consent is not only are you protecting yourself legally, but you also now have a consumer that knows you're going to call them and is expecting that call. They may not necessarily want it, but they've at least given you permission. So now you're going to have a much more receptive person to the offer that you're making to them. May or may not still make you the sale, get you the contract, whatever it is that your goal is, your business objective. But you now have a better chance for it. And that's important to remember. This is not just a preventative step. This is actually something that can help your business. Now, one thing you have to be very careful of is what the FTC calls coerced consent. Coerced consent means that if they don't give you permission to call them, you are not going to give them something. Let's say you're offering them free postage and handling if they sign up now. Well, if you say that they don't get the postage and handling unless they accept your phone call, that's called coerced consent. You force them to give consent to get that benefit. That is something that the attorneys are very particular looking for, so you have to be very careful with that. Okay, If you haven't been able to get express prior consent, which will happen quite a bit, especially if you generate leads through a third party that just sells them without them being generated for you specifically, then you have to take some other steps for it. Primarily, when you call them, you need to be able to identify which of your leads have permission and which don't, and then use a TCPA-friendly solution to actually make your calls. Now, solutions that are TCPA-friendly have to find a way to split the two requirements that define an ATDS. So if you look at it, it is a system to store or produce telephone numbers to be called, and a system that can actually make those calls. By having a platform that is TCPA friendly, and we'll go over a little bit of what that means, you are actually going to split that definition. The most valuable thing is not the actual making of the call. It is the managing of the leads or the inventory. It is the performance of the agents. It is the record keeping and tracking. So you take advantage of the inventory management and reporting part of your solution, and then you actually make the call using another device. So what happens in the example here with 3C, a TCPA mode project is actually going to give you the ability, present the lead to the agent, put up all the information, and then allow them to make that call on another phone, a separate system not connected with 3C. By doing that, you have now split the definition of what an ATDS is and made it so that you're not actually violating TCPA with it. Now, you have to be very careful with these definitions because a lot of systems will say that, but unless you've had a legal finding or legal memorandum, and you should definitely require it from any vendor you choose to go with, you cannot be certain that the setup that you're using is going to be accepted in TCPA. Very, very critical. Make sure that you ask the probing questions and you get the documentation necessary to ensure that you have done your due diligence and that you have met your TCPA requirements. Another key thing that you can do is update your business processes. Make sure that you are being prepared for the eventuality of a potential lawsuit. Key things to remember: technology is an important tool, but it's only a tool. People, your agents in the call center, the people making the calls, are your best line of defense or your biggest liability. You need to train them very well in the beginning and then have refresher training. I always recommend quarterly, but annually at a minimum. Make sure they understand TCPA, what they can and can't do, and then ask for their questions. I also strongly suggest ask for their suggestions. Find out from them what they're hearing from the consumers and how you can maybe make things better. The other one, record keeping. Nothing happens unless there's a record of it. You have to have good records to be able to present to your lawyer, the courts, anyone else that is challenging you on TCPA. Make sure you have good records of every call that was made, recordings of them if they fit your business, an accurate history. When did the call start? When did the call stop? Where did the phone number come from? All of your record keeping, and it's very specific by business, so I won't go into all the details here, but always remember that those records are what defend you in court. Not the agent, not the call, it's all your records. To wrap it up, ATDSs, still very, very important. Whether you get the permission or not, they still add a lot of efficiency and they maintain your best benefit and ROI by giving you the best performance they can out of the call center. Compliance can be achieved. Follow these 3 simple steps. Get permission. If you can't, use a TCPA-friendly solution, and then train your people and keep good records. G, I'm going to hand it back to you here. Any questions, please feel free to have people reach out to me, and if people would like to schedule a one-on-one to discuss their business opportunities, I would love to do that with them. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure to have you join us here today. Again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. I'm sure everyone found all the information you had to provide extremely helpful. So again, thank you for joining us. What I'd like to do at this point is conclude the webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for their time. Should anyone have any questions with regards to TCPA, or for that matter, anything generically related to 3CLogic, our call center software and solutions, or our TCPA-friendly platform, please feel free to give us a call. Myself, Robert, as well as members of our sales and marketing team are always on standby and ready and willing to schedule free consultations to discuss your specific needs and how perhaps 3CLogic can help address them. You can reach us in a few different ways. You can certainly call us directly at 800-350-8656. You can visit our website at www.3clogic.com, or if you choose, you can email us at info@3clogic.com. I want to thank everyone again for joining us. I hope you have found the webinar insightful and helpful. Please keep in mind that we will be hosting monthly events in the future, so please stay tuned, keep an eye on our calendar, and should anything come up that piques your interest, feel free to join us again. It'd be a pleasure to have you. Thanks, everyone.